It's the hero in the half shell versus the Hadouken. Here's your look at the Playmates toys. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles versus Street Fighter, Leonardo and Ryu. Street Fighter celebrates its 35th anniversary in 2022, marking a historic moment for one of the most influential fighting game franchises of all time. The series charged into the scene in 1987, quickly becoming a household name around the world with its captivating gameplay and iconic characters such as Chun-Li and Ryu. Now the team will face one of their greatest challenges yet as they battle against the formidable opponents from another indispensable franchise, the New York City sewer-dwelling, crime-fighting, pizza-loving Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. In this iconic versus 2-pack series, will Ryu have the skills to throw a Hadouken and take down the leader of the Turtles, Leonardo? Will Chun-Li use her fast attacks to handle the master of the nunchucks, Michelangelo? Only you can decide. I'm pretty sure I'll be popping in quarters for this epic fight. Before we get a closer look, though, at the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles versus Street Fighter, Leonardo versus Ryu, I'd like to thank the folks over at Playmates Toys that did provide this sample that we could have a look at in this video. Grabbing the tape measure, we're going to measure off first Leonardo, who I guess is really the smallest of the two. Leonardo stands about 5.5 inches in height, or the figure's about 14 centimeters tall. Then on to Ryu. Ryu's more closer to about 16 inches, but he's almost, I would say, about 5 3/4 of an inch tall, and that works out to be a figure that's 14.5 centimeters in height. Let me also just say, I think this packaging had some of the most fastener ties I've ever had to cut in the opener of these videos. Just when I thought I had enough cut with Leonardo, I go to pull the figure out, and sure enough, there are a couple of other fastener ties still left behind uncut. Finally had both of them, though, freed from their tray prison. Let's have a look at the accessories that come included with them. And by accessories, I'm kind of more leaning in the direction of Leonardo, as he's really the only one of the two that actually comes included with any. The figure comes included with a pair of katanas. Fing! Both of the katanas seem identical to one another. They've actually got a built-in groove to the plastic. The plastic itself looks like it's been cast here in a more silver plastic, where the hilt, actually you can see here, has been painted in the black. The black actually makes several appearances here with Leonardo that we'll talk more about in a moment. The katanas, for obvious reasons, if you know anything about your turtle fandom, can actually be holstered on the back of the scabbards. While putting them in, though, you want to make sure that you got them facing the right way, as if you put them in the wrong way, there seems to be an abrupt stop. As you can see, you can get both the katanas holstered on the back of Leo's shell. Or, which you can also do, too, these can fit into his hand. Although, to be honest, they don't fit well in his hands. He does have articulation, which I love the fact that they would have incorporated that. But because he has articulation in his fingers and his thumb, it's kind of actually hard for him to hold a proper grip when it comes to him holding the blades. If you put the hands around, he does an okay job of holding them. But the moment you bang it, it seems like the blades fall out of his hands. Again, you kind of just put them in his hand and just kind of grip everything together as best as you can get it. But Leonardo doesn't hold them the best. I think almost in a case like this, I would have just given up altogether the articulation here in the hands and given him just gripping hands instead. Because even, again, when you get them in what you think to be the best position, they just don't hold the katanas as well as I think they should. Moving the accessories out of the way, though. Getting a closer look, though, at Leonardo. One thing I really like about this figure is the way they've painted it. It sort of has like an etched look to it, as if it's been sketched and somebody has then gone in and painted it. The way they've actually used such dark lines work actually to the credit of Leonardo. It kind of gives him, in fact, more of a almost sinister look on his face. The big, large eyes, big, large white teeth, and then being painted around that in black really gives a rather interesting contrast I'm not used to seeing on a Ninja Turtle figure. They've got it actually everywhere here. On the front of his shell, he's got all these little kind of nicks, little damaged points, I guess. But again, it looks really like the old Mirage comics, the way they've actually drawn and painted this onto the piece itself. What's a little bit of a departure actually on Leo is while he still has the blue here for a bandana, blue makes no other appearance here on the figure. What you would almost expect to be in his elbow pads, for example, has now just been replaced with black. He's got black here on his elbow pads, here on his wrist pads, and even here on his knee pads. Even like the bandolier that has the famous L logo there on the front, of course, to tell us that's Leonardo, has all been instead painted in black. I'm not used to seeing it, but I do think it's actually kind of a rather interesting look for Leonardo. I've got enough Ninja Turtles that have the colors appropriate where you always expect to see the elbow pads in the blue to match the blue in the headband. I actually think I kind of like this a little bit more, that they've gone with such dark colors like this for the black. When you spin the figure around, of course, you've got the back of the shell. Again, like the holsters here, the scabbards to hold his katanas, again, are molded here in black plastic. You can see as well, to match the bandolier, they've slightly darkened the color that actually straps the scabbards to the rest of it. I kind of really like the colors. I think it works really well here on the figure. For the articulation on Leonardo, his head is on a ball joint. Head rotates all the way around. You can have the head looking down only by just a little bit. And you can also have the head looking up a lot more than that. Head also rocks back and forth as well. I just love the smile on this guy. It's a very interesting looking Leonardo, and obviously he's missing pupils altogether there as well. For the arms do come out at a 90-degree angle bend. There's a pin and socket joint working behind the scenes there. You can take the arms and rotate them, yes, all the way around. The figure does have a bicep swivel. The figure does also have a double hinge on the elbow, and the hands also rotate back and forth. I think they are using the same mold as those original Ultimate Turtle figures we got years ago. Like I said, like the articulation they put in these figures are actually pretty good. Upper torso is also on a ball joint, so you can rock that back and forth, have it looking up and down as well. And as for the legs are on ball joints, so you can hinge those out. Take the legs and move them forward, and you can move them back 3/4 of the way up the thigh. There's a swivel cut, so you can take that leg, and at that cut, you can rotate it all the way around. Just, of course, making sure you get it back to the way it was started with. Double hinge on the knee, and then there's also articulation in the feet. You can move them back and forth this way, and also ankle rocket too, with some decent toe articulation. What's nice, though, is that they actually have individual toes. Well, at least you can move them back and forth independently from one another. Yeah, not a bad-looking Leo. Again, I'm so used to seeing Leonardo with, like, blue elbow pads, blue knee pads. It's really interesting to see that they've painted it in black. And I gotta say, like, the result does look good on Leonardo. It kind of gives him a real kind of more comic book look, other than just going in and painting after the fact. So there's Leonardo. On to now Ryu. Now, if I had asked myself back in high school, I would have called his name Ryu. But apparently most of the time people do call him Ryu. Ryu. Either one I think is fine. The figure is decently done. I like the way they've actually sculpted Ryu's head. You can see he's got very large eyebrows, very slightly smaller eyes. And like in the game, he actually has the bangs that drape in front of his headband. You can see as well, unlike Leo, his headband actually does stretch a lot further as he's got these extra little pieces that come down. One thing I did actually notice, though, on Ryu is that the head on mine, at least, is a little loose. I don't know if it has something also to do with the way they've got the headband. I don't think it's necessarily springing the head forward, but the head on mine is just a little on the more looser side. One thing also I noticed as well is that the head sculpt that they used, the plastic that they used, isn't quite the same color that they used for the rest of the body and the rest of the arms. It's pretty close. It's just a little bit lighter, though. Now, while Leo did come included with, for example, his accessories of the katanas, unfortunately Ryu doesn't come with anything. He only comes with fists drawn, ready to use. I would have liked that they could have also included flat hands. If you did want to simulate the Hadouken, you can't actually pull it off. I mean, you can kind of, if anything, you can kind of have his hands in a way that it looks like he could. But I think it would look much better if they could have included relaxed or flat hands for Ryu, just so you could pull off the Hadouken. Of course, he is wearing his gi there. This is a softer plastic than the rest of his body. He does have the belt in front of it. This is all, by the way, sculpted to the rest of the top of the gi. And he's got some also painted down legs that match somewhat the same color. Here, it looks like they've actually molded the plastic, but because this is a softer plastic, the whites aren't quite gelling with one another, but they're still pretty close. Ryu is one that certainly likes to fight barefoot, and as you can see, he's got very large feet. That actually helped to really stabilize the figure, too. It gives him a little bit more of a better footing when it comes to him standing properly. For his articulation, well, it's pretty close to Leo's. Of course, we'll still look at it because, of course, he's a human character. His head is again on that ball joint, so you can rotate the head all the way around. You can have the head looking down, looking up, and you can also, again, rock it back and forth. Shoulders work exactly the same way as Leonardo. In this case, though, you can actually pull off a 90-degree angle bend. You can take those arms and rotate them, all the way around, Swivel at the bicep, swivel at the bicep. I want to make sure I'm spending just as much time on the one side as I am on the other. Has a double hinge on the elbow, which is good. and very large hands. His hands actually seem a little on the bigger side, but they rotate all the way around, and you can hinge them back and forth. A little more on the concealed side, it seems like he does actually have something working behind the scenes underneath the gi, as you can hand rotate. Underneath the gi, you can rotate his waist back and forth. The legs split out, once again, relying on a ball joint. You can take those legs and move them forward. You can move them, yes, back. And about halfway up the thigh, there's a swivel cut, so you can rotate the leg all the way around that way. Double hinge also on the knee in this case. Hinge on the foot, the same as Leo. And again, you can also rock it back and forth. This Ryu, by the way, doesn't have independent toe articulation. I don't really think the figure needed it anyways. Short of really, I mean, he doesn't have any attack, like fire attacks. But if anything, I would have wished at least that Ryu could have come included with some flat hands. To pull off a successful Hadouken, he doesn't necessarily need the orb of energy. But at the very least, it would have been nice that they could have included a pair of relaxed hands to be swapped out with the fist that he currently has right now. One thing I gotta say this set does really well is with having both the figures super articulated. And while I can't necessarily pull off a 100% successful Hadouken for Ryu, at least you can actually get the body posed in such the way that it actually looks like he's able to pull one off. Still, though, wish that they could have included a pair of flat hands just to 100% sell the idea of a Hadouken coming Leo's way. But the way they balance these figures, too, with the articulation in the ankles and appropriate articulation points in the knees and the legs and the thighs, you can really get these guys in some really interesting poses. I love the look of Leo. I didn't think I would, to be all honest. With the amount of scratching of black paint that they added in there, I thought it may be too busy. Although the more and longer time I've had to spend with Leonardo, the more I'm really warming up to the idea of how much paint that they've added. It looks like Leo not necessarily was pulled from a video game, but rather instead the pages of a Mirage comic, and just been painted on top of that. I love the way they've done that. Ryu actually isn't painted the same way. In fact, of the two figures, he's painted a lot less. But he more than makes up for it with a decent head sculpt and decent articulation again in his body to pull off some pretty Street Fighter looking poses. What do you guys think of the set? Let me know down below in the comments section. Have you picked up the set for yourself, or based on this review, what do you guys think of the figures? I'd also like to as well thank the folks over at Playmates Toys that did provide the sample of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles versus Street Fighter, Leonardo versus Ryu. Also, maybe as well, I'm going to throw this out as a video question for you guys. You can answer it as well down below if you like. When it comes to Ryu, how do you pronounce it? Do you pronounce it as Ryu, or do you like to pronounce it as Ryu? It's not going to be necessarily a debate, but let me know down below in the comments section how you pronounce the character's name. Also as well, if you enjoyed this video, hit it a like. If you're loving the content you're seeing and do certainly want to stick around for more, well, because, well, we have wrapped up the review for Leo and Ryu, we are actually going to also be looking at Michelangelo and Chun-Li. The key to making sure that you're not missing out on any of that is by hitting the subscribe button down below and turning on the ever crucial bell notification. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.